A very good evening, a warm welcome for the second time today. If you happen to be watching our special broadcast a little earlier, a special broadcast that celebrated the announcement of the 10 top Chenin producers of the year. Well, 9 top producers, 10 top Chenins in the Standard Bank Top 10 Chenin Blanc Challenge with the Chenin Blanc Association. And now back with this evening's show. Welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick n Pay. And welcome to an evening of celebration, an evening in which we go back to those top 10. We hope we're still trying to find Ken Forrester somewhere in Tunbridge Wells, I think, so we can chat to him and James Pietersen, who chaired the panel, and find out exactly what got into the top 10, why they got into the top 10, and why Chenin Blanc is just doing so well for South Africa. So some expert opinion, we hope, coming up just a little later. We'll also be chatting to Higgo Jacobs and to Roland Peens, who are probably right now busy sitting online looking at yachts in the Caribbean to buy after their Strauss wine auction earlier on in the week, where a vintage bottle of Van de Constance went for just shy of R1 million, almost 100,000 Rand for a bottle of GS66. And a couple of other big sellers. How is our wine going for so much? And what does it say about the South African wine market? Is this simply an oddity, or is it indicative of something bigger and better? We'll find out from Higgo and from Roland a little later on. But we kick off the show with one of my very favorite people in the wine industry. He is somebody who I have drunk a lot of wine from, as opposed to with, because he serves it to me with a big smile. And his favorite thing to do is to give me a glass of sort of a Bolivian pinotage and to try and get me to work out exactly what that wine is. He is not only the head sommelier at Marble and Saint, he is also the South African Sommelier of the Year as of Wednesday. Congratulations and welcome, Wikus Human.
Thank you very much, Dan. Thanks for having me on the show.
So basically, I'm talking to Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi rolled into one and then dressed in a sommelier's outfit. People going, well, that sounds impressive, but I don't really know what that means. Explain to us, first of all, what this title is, and then how one goes about winning it.
So it's the best sommelier in South Africa for all age groups. There's a best young sommelier as well, which I took about 4 years ago. And this year managed to succeed to get the best sommelier for all age groups in South Africa. This gives me the chance to go and represent South Africa at the World Championships in 2023 in France to represent basically South Africa from our wine side and sommelier side. Getting into, the competition, it was first like an open book kind of theory paper, which you had to do your homework pretty carefully, quite some tricky questions in there. Then they announced 7 semi-finalists, which we all met up at Blauwklippen yesterday. In the morning, we had a short theory paper, which was focusing a little bit about South African wine. There was some Rhone questions, some questions from stuff I've never even heard about. That's how difficult the theory usually gets. Then we had to identify a red wine in front of a panel of judges, which was quite hard. It was a full description of the wine, and at the end, got to call the wine, essentially. I did go with Argentinian Malbec, and it ended up actually being a South African Malbec, so not too far off to both New World countries. After that, we had to do a 6-course menu pairing where you had 2 minutes to study the menu, and you had to choose 6 wines from 6 different continents without repeating a continent and pair it up with the 6 dishes in 5 minutes' time. Without a pencil, this is all verbal. So you have to get very level-headed what you've said, where you've worked from, etc. After that, they announced 3 finalists to go on stage into the finals, which was myself, Laurie Cooper, who's the reigning best young sommelier, and Jean-Vincent Dredon. We then came on stage. We had to do 3 tasks. The first task was to make a dry martini, which is one of my favorite cocktails to have. So luckily I knew exactly what to do there. We then had to open a bottle of bubbly as well. So it's all just to see how you can work on the floor, walk around the table, carry glasses. Do you know the recipe for a gin martini or dry gin martini? And it's all how you serve. Do you talk while you serve? Do you give a bit of information? The second task was the customers ordered a bottle of St. Brie Sauvignon Blanc from Burgundy. The bottle was on display, but the bottle was heated, so it was very hot. So there was another Sauvignon Blanc in the ice bucket. I went for the Chenin because we had to pair it up with, I think it was scallops, if I'm correct. I went for the Chenin as an alternative, but I think the main aim of the task was to see how well you could adapt to the situation and take action. You only had 3 minutes to then select another wine, put the glasses down, get the wine on the table because the food was on the way. And then the final task was they pulled out a bottle of 10-year-old Seychelles Madeira out of a bag, and you just had to explain what it is, and the restaurant, can the restaurant still use it, or must we throw it out?
That's just a fairly simple process then, wasn't it? I don't know what you were so worried about.
It was, like, honestly, it's difficult. You don't know what's going to happen. Anything can happen. I mean, you could drop your corkscrew, you could break a bottle, you could break a glass. It's all just, I mean, luckily I work the floor every night at Marble when we open. And I must say, I said to David and Gary as well, I think that definitely plays in my favor of working the floor every night and being under that pressure every evening on the floor.
I wanted to ask about that because I've spoken to you on the phone a few times, chatted to you at the shop, and you've been dashing home to read up on Slovenian Riesling and master your knowledge of Papua New Guinean Shiraz. To what extent does that kind of studying cover it? And then to what extent is it just your natural knowledge, your natural love, your natural understanding of wine that carries you through a challenge like this?
Yeah, I think the basics are very much important. That definitely comes into play with all the tasks because they do ask kind of simpler questions during your task. The task that you have to do, so they'll ask you something simple like what does MCC stand for or anything like that. The thing is, studying for a comp, when it comes to studying all these weird and wonderful countries and reading up about coffee and tea and cocktails, that is more competition studying. They focus a lot in the World Champs on things like this. I worked through the previous paper. So on the floor, I'm sure no one's going to ask me about a Shiraz from Papua New Guinea, but if they want to know about it, I know now because I did go and read up about it. But yeah, just studying for even just a wine certificate is much different than to studying for a comp. Basics are important, but you have to go read up what's trending currently in the world.
How nervous were you yesterday, and now how much of the pressure did you feel? Because you always look completely ice cold whenever I'm with you.
I think we all yesterday, and that's unfortunately a thing with all sommeliers. I think we like more work better on the floor, where theory is not all of our strongest points. We usually just shove the theory to the side. So after I wrote the theory exam in the morning and I did my blind tasting, I was very, very confident. And I just said to myself, Vic, if you make it into that top 3 and you go on stage, it is something that you do every day. And that is, I just walked up there with so much confidence. And yeah, I just basically just ripped it all out of the bag there. But it's a lot of the stress is, I mean, it's still sitting a little bit in the heart. You're always scared who's going to phone now and ask you what question. It's a very big title to carry in South Africa, but I will carry it with pride and to show it yet at Marble and Saint.
Tell me a little bit about this prize of yours, this team that you represent. I think you said it's France next year. How does that happen? What happens with that?
So there's sommelier competitions all around the world. So you'll have like the best sommelier of Spain, the best sommelier of Italy, best sommelier of England. So all the competitions are happening now. And then all of us get together, one person from every country, and then compete against one another to establish the best sommelier in the world.
We won't start asking about that one just yet, but we do look forward to having the best sommelier in the world back on the show, and his name will be Wikus. What about the broader sommelier space? How important is it to have this sort of competition, to recognize sommeliers, to really push what is more than just a job? It's an art form, at the risk of sounding a little precious, because what you guys do is so specialized and takes so much work and so much dedication.
I think these competitions are fantastic in South Africa and all around the world for sommeliers, especially the younger competition as well. Like some of the contestants that entered yesterday, it was their first competition. And like I always tell them, learn as much as you can from these competitions. You'll see what you learn in these competitions is something you can practice on the floor. You might fall in the same situation on the floor if you haven't yet. And that definitely builds you into a better sommelier. And it just lets people who watch the show and will read the article afterwards once it's published just understand more what we do. We're not only here to to take your money, but we're here to actually listen to you and find you out a proper bottle of wine to have with your dinner, whether it's a bottle of 300 Rand or whether it's a bottle of 1,000 Rand. At the end of the day, I want you to walk out of Marble and Saint or wherever I've served you and just be a happy customer and felt that you actually got some value for money.
We've got a couple of people watching at the moment who were with you yesterday, Wikus. Amanda de Klerk says, Wikus Human, if you were nervous, let me assure you, no one noticed. And then Ina Smith, Her Royal Majesty of Cheninness. I was at the event yesterday. Wikus was awesome, and he won as one of the many prizes a set of the 2021 Chenin Challenge winners announced today. Well, how's that for a cracking prize? We're seeing a lot of wine celebration around the world, around South Africa in particular, whether it's sommelier or today we had the top 10 Chenin, lots of prizes. There's lots of education flowing around. Are you seeing that translating into the restaurant? Admittedly, Saint and Marble do tend to attract a fairly high-end customer, but when people come in, do they have a pretty good knowledge? Are they asking, can I have a nice red? Or are they saying, do you have the Hogan 2016 Divergent with you? What's the level of consumer knowledge you're seeing on the floor?
I think we see a bit of both. There's clients out that walk in and you show them a red wine that they've never even heard of about, but they drink quite a bit of red wine. So there's a little bit of the uneducated customer, but then we also have customers that walk in that I'm quite scared of, actually, just what I say at the table. They probably drink more than me and know more about the wine itself. But it always keeps us on our toes, even me and my whole team. I always tell to them the best studying you can do is self-study. I can teach you the basics and I can show you how to do service, but going to read up on every single wine and knowing what wine you have in the window, what is the history behind that wine. It doesn't necessarily always have to be the fruit flavors or what the wine tastes like. Just have a history and a story about the wine and know the basic style of the wine. That's how you make the sale on the table, and that's what the customer wants to hear. He wants to hear a story about a wine.
With that story there, you also need a wine that delivers something that she or he will enjoy. Quality of wine, we wax lyrical, especially on this show, about South African wine, and I feel justifiably so. What are you seeing both as your own interpretation of the quality of South African wine and a response from those very occasional international customers that are dripping through when they're tasting South African wine and comparing it from the international wine from the markets from which they've arrived?
I think the South African market has, in the last 5-10 years, has grown so much that I think when I started out drinking wine, what was that, 9 years ago, there's probably 1 or 2 wines you could count on your fingers. Today, you can sit in the tasting in the morning or tasting in the afternoon, and there's 8 wines that you want to list. The South African wine quality has improved so much and is still improving. It's now easier to have something. If someone wants to drink an international wine or maybe drink a South African wine, that you can compare it to an international wine and say, you know what, if you really like Burgundian Pinot Noir, why don't you try this Pinot Noir from South Africa? That's basically almost on the same level. That's from 2 different countries. The style and quality of South African wine is improving day by day, definitely.
Grant Saul's joining us. I know he's a regular down at Marble. Well done, Wikus. Looking forward to sharing a glass of congratulations soon at Marble. Well, that leads me into my final question for you, Wikus, because I know you've got plenty of wine to get off and serve tonight. The work never stops. What wine did you celebrate with, and what would be the ultimate wine to open and raise a glass to yourself for such a terrific achievement?
So actually, we weren't supposed to open the same brie in the comp, but I think Laurie pulled the bottle, and I think JV afterwards also just pulled the cork on the same brie. So we had 2 bottles of same brie to enjoy, but Joe actually had to take back to Germany, which didn't happen. But yeah, if I had to open something, it will probably be a proper champagne, perhaps something vintage, either old Pole, or just go full out and just hit a bottle of Salon, just to celebrate.
Oh, celebrations are great. Schalk Willem Joubert, who's busy watching the GQ model down at Tybosh. You and your fellow sommeliers are a great asset to our industry. Your contributions are underrated in South Africa. Well done. I think that's a very shrewd analysis, a very apt one. Hopefully one that doesn't apply for too much longer, because I'd like to see the art of sommeliering continue to get the acclaim that it deserves. Wikus, from here, we know you're going off to France. What about the broader horizon? Are there other sommelier targets? Are there other areas of the wine world that you'd like to pursue?
Geez, it's quite a difficult question. I mean, yeah, it's now just, I mean, studying for the world champs. Of course, you got to nitpick at every single country. And yeah, I wanna focus more on the USA. Like French and Italy is something we study quite often. But looking at things like Australia, USA, nitpicking at the bit more smaller countries and understanding like wines of Greece, etc. That's definitely something that would be my main focus.
Well, can't see being too much of a challenge because you do have an almost supernatural ability when it comes to wine. Biggest congratulations. It was a tough field there. I know Jean-Vincent in particular is a very gifted sommelier. You beat off some tough competition, but you deserve to because I know how much you put into this. Congratulations. And it gives me an enormous amount of pleasure to have had the South African Sommelier of the Year on the show this evening, Wikus. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan. Thanks for having me.
So there we go. Wikus Human, if you're in the Johannesburg area, get down to Marble for dinner. He's often hovering around Saint at lunchtime. And as well as being just a lovely, lovely guy, he does have an extraordinary feel for wine. Never makes you feel that you don't know about wine. And he's never somebody who forces a wine down your throat. He's a very gentle educator. And I think that's so important in a sommelier is letting people get a feel for wine without making them feel that they don't know about it and that they're somehow on the back foot. Wikus has got the balance just right. So we celebrate Wikus. In fact, I'm celebrating. I've got here a glass of the Gem from Waterford, the 2014 vintage. Mostly because it's one of my wife's favourite wines, and she's on her way home shortly. So I shall enjoy a glass as the show plays out. And I'm going to get shouted at because my next guests were insistent that I have some Chenin Blanc, but one of them knows my wife particularly well and knows that she's a Philistine and doesn't drink Chenin Blanc. So I will have some later in the evening, perhaps, Mr. Forrester, because Ken joins us. I'm not sure if James Pietersen is with us as well yet, but Ken is the chairman of the Chenin Blanc Association. It was a very important day today for the Chenin Blanc Association. So let's welcome up said chair, who I think we find somewhere in the UK, last seen in a Tesco in Tunbridge Wells. How are you, Ken Forrester?
Dan, I'm right here where you grew up, where your parents had a home in Tunbridge Wells. You're quite right. That's it. And I've managed to find a cute little pub with, as you can see, some very, very nice, lush surroundings and good Wi-Fi. I do hope that we can continue talking to each other without being cut off, especially as I would like to nominate you, Dan, as communicator of the decade for the wine industry. I mean, you have done such a fine job for the South African wine industry, mate. Honestly, nobody has done it better than you. Thank you.
Oh, it's a great pleasure. And thank you, Ken. Those are very kind words. But it's all really just a great facade to allow me to drink vast amounts of wine with people like yourself. And I revel in that role. And I revel in it when it's great South African wine. And we have so much great South African wine. Today was another reminder of that. Tell us a little bit about these Chenin Blanc Awards, the top 10, why they're important both to Chenin Blanc and to South African wine as a whole.
Dan, Chenin Blanc has become the lingua franca of the South African wine industry. It really has taken its place as the world's kind of name for South African wine. When you think of white South African wine, you know, almost anywhere you go in the world, if you say to them, tell me about a wine from New Zealand, they go, oh, Sauvignon Blanc, boom. Today, if you say to them, tell me about a wine from South Africa, it's Chenin Blanc, boom. And they've got it. And it's just, I mean, it's incredible to have seen the growth, to have seen the acceptance, and to have seen people. And it's got a lot to do. Chenin Blanc is a very malleable grape, very pliable. I mean, if you're drinking in broad international terms, if you wanted to drink a Pinot Grigio, or you wanted a Picpoul de Pinet, or you wanted a Sauvignon Blanc, or you wanted a Albarino, or you wanted a light Chardonnay, and somebody gave you Chenin Blanc, you wouldn't be offended. It would fit into your flavor profile. Chenin covers a bridge of flavors, and it does it very, very well. It's also a wonderfully food-friendly wine, and it's taken the world a long time to realize that. Chenin struggled with a kind of, call it a checkered history, if you like, where grown in the Loire Valley as it was, and known from the Loire Valley where it was, the two predominant areas seem to have been Sauvignon and Vouvray. Obviously, there are more areas in the Loire Valley, But Vibre was seen to have been sweet, and Sauvignon was seen to have been sometimes dry, but always very acidic. And global warming, climate change, call it what you will, has changed all of that. And what we've been doing with Chenin Blanc, what we've done with bringing recognition to Chenin Blanc in the Chenin Blanc Association in the last 10 years, last 15 years, has been really textbook, has been fantastic for Chenin Blanc, for South Africa. It's a foot in the door for South Africa in every foreign country. And once we get a foot in the door, we can follow up, we can lead with Chenin Blanc, and we can follow up with our Chardonnays, we can follow up with Syrah, we can follow up with our Cabernet blends, our Cabernets. And so it really, really is important to have an icebreaker, to have something that breaks the mold, that gets through the ice. And Chenin Blanc is busy doing that successfully, I would say.
It's very easy to wax lyrical about these things. I do it frequently on the show and happily, but you're able to give me an on-the-ground perspective because you're in the UK at the moment, catching up with suppliers and talking to them about wine in general. What is the feel that you're getting from the people you've seen? I know you were down in Brighton yesterday and Tunbridge Wells today. What are you getting from people about South African wine as a whole, Chenin Blanc in particular, from a retail perspective in the UK?
Dan, it's still a handsell. What's interesting, I think, and it might be too early to tell. What's interesting is Brexit. Brexit means the UK is no longer part of Europe, obviously. But what does that mean? It means they start to pay duty. They have different customs arrangements, and so suddenly South Africa is on a level footing with Europe in terms of supplying wine into the UK, where previously supplying wine into the UK was almost provincial for the rest of Europe. So here we are now, all really being on the same footing, and I think it gives us a huge advantage. And we need to move swiftly, and we need to take advantage of this opportunity that it offers us. And I think that the UK will and is ripe to taking on a lot more South African wine. And I really have a feeling that we're on the cusp of great things to come.
Which will not be hurt by the quality of the wine that we saw in our Standard Bank Chenin Blanc top 10 a little earlier on today. Congratulations to you, because one of yours made that particular list. Possibly not the one people might have been expecting. It's this Terre Noire of yours that you've gone off and borrowed from the Swartland while a farmer was asleep and made something quite special from it. And it's a wine that clearly got the nod from the judges. But just across the 10 as a whole, from your conversations with that judging panel, from the people involved, the perception of the quality of Chenin Blanc that was seen this year?
You know, it would seem from what the judges had to say, and I'm very happily completely separate from the judges. Ina arranges the judges. She organizes the tasting. I hear about what happened afterwards. And all the way from James, who very graciously has hosted and been chairman of that tasting panel for the last 2 years, I think this is his third year, it would seem truly that Chenin Blanc is coming of age. It is one of the great white wines of the world. It's starting to really look like a pro. It's got nuances of difference, nuances of flavor. I mean, as you say, surprisingly, our Swartland Chenin came to the fore. Chenin Blanc is a mirror of the soils of the terroir that it's grown in. Wherever you grow Chenin, it will reflect where it's grown. And Chenin Blanc, if you look at something as far afield as Wellington or Swartland or Stellenbosch, and I've always said Stellenbosch produces cool climate. In fact, I've always spoken of cool sunshine. Now, cool sunshine doesn't happen in Swartland. And Swartland, I mean, you remember at one stage there was a story about a particular Swartland farmer who was hell-bent on sand mining because he had the earth-moving equipment. That was his second life, his previous life. And he decided to pull all the Chenin out and to go sand mining and to sell all the Malmesbury shales and the gravels and everything else. That wine of mine, which came in that top 10, was from that vineyard that I rescued. I went to go see him. I made him an offer on the soil, on the vineyards that were left that he hadn't pulled out yet. And that's the vineyard I have a contract on. I mean, it's just been the most wonderful result. So, yeah, Chenin Blanc, I think, has truly come of age. The best part of it is that wonderful relay of life where we all run our 100 meters and pass the baton. I'm happy to say that I've passed that baton. That when I started off, when I picked that baton up, nobody knew how hot it was, how long it was, how hard it was. And 25, 26, 27 years later, I've been making Chenin, singing the Chenin song, beating the Chenin drum. And I think that the youngsters have picked that up rock solid. And they've got it. It's fantastic to see.
There are a number of elements which we can take great cheer from. I think that is a leading one. But there's also the element of this particular competition that it strikes a real chord for me, and that's the social responsibility that's been very cleverly worked into the prize fund. And it was an idea that was explained by Standard Bank a little earlier on today by Craig, that came from a deal that Standard Bank had done where the prize goes back into the community. And with winelands being such a community, and wine being far more than just a winemaker or a proprietor or a farmer, it's a really, really nice way of getting far more people in the celebration of this particular country.
Dan, when we were looking for sponsorship, it struck me that sponsorships these days are much, much more than somebody throwing money at you. They really want an investment in you. They want some return on their investment. And it struck me that if we were to say to the bank, look, what we want is we want to support wine workers, we want to support vineyard workers. We want to go all the way down to the people who work in the vineyard, and we want to plow back support to those people. We want to support the farmer. We want to encourage better prices for Chenin Blanc. There was a time when Chenin Blanc sold at about half the price. Chenin Blanc fruit sold at about half the price of Sauvignon Blanc. Those days are over. Those days are gone. Chenin Blanc today at a premium sells at the same price as premium Cabernet. And why not? Why shouldn't it? It's quite right that it should. So we've moved Chenin Blanc, I believe, into the right place. Kind of mentally that's where it should be. And over and above that, getting the farms, getting the workers support, getting support all the way back to the workers. I said to the bank, we don't want a prize that sends the winemaker or the producer to France on another tour around the world. If the producer wants to go to France, he'll find a way to get there. He can afford it. What we want is a prize that adds value to the workforce. And it gives Standard Bank part of their ethos about putting back to the community. It adds to what Standard Bank does. So what we're doing is we're offering them an opportunity to invest in community in a place which they have no reach. And the Chenin Blanc Association has that reach, and by creating a channel for the bank and giving the bank this channel to come into the community, we really hope that adds value to them, to what they do, and we know it adds value to the community. And in simple terms, I'm not sure who said it, and forgive me, but the man who said that if every community looked after their own, no community would go wanting, was terribly wise.
Well, let's have a quick look at why this is not just such a cool way of doing the competition, but a way which has a considered impact on wine communities. This is a little video that the Chenin Blanc Association put together to highlight the prizes and the funds, and in particular what a past winner Spear had done with them. So here we go. Here is a look at why this prize is so impactful.
In 2014, with the generous support of Standard Bank, the Chenin Blanc Association started the annual Chenin Blanc Top 10 Challenge, identifying and rewarding top Chenin winemaking in the country. Every year, each of the top 10 producers receives a cash prize, with the condition that the money be spent on projects to uplift and upskill farm workers, their families and their communities. Spear in Stellenbosch is a regular Top 10 Challenge winner. This is their story.
We use the winnings from this competition towards supporting 20 students to obtain a formal qualification that will allow them to start their own farm or potentially even work for other wineries or agricultural producers.
I want to be a winemaker in 10, 15 years' time. People are saying this is for white men, hey, not a black woman. But inside me, I have that drive. So with all the support, I know that I can.
A lovely gesture. It's worked really well. It's an important part of it. Before we let you go, Ken, just looking on screen, we've got a picture of all 10 of those winners. I know you are one of them. But just broadly speaking, your assessment of these winners, of these producers, of what they're currently doing to advance the Chenin Blanc cause?
Dan, the very first thing I want to do is contact every one of them and trade them a case of wine for a case of wine, because I want to be part. I want to have a case of every one of those wines. And there's magnificent wine out there. There's super wine. Every one of them is a delicious wine. You look at the Morgans on; they've been in the top 10 for 7 years in a row. I mean, look at Kleine Zalzer. Look at Stellenrust. Stellenrust, I think, own this competition secretly. I mean, they're just, and refreshingly, there's some newcomers. And it's great that we've got newcomers coming in. It speaks to the credibility of the judges. The judging panel, I think, goes without kind of any fear. I mean, the judging panel has been fantastic, what they've managed to put together and the way that judging panel has been held together. So I think we've got 10 great wines. And the idea was always to celebrate Chenin Blanc. So not necessarily to find a winner. We weren't looking for one winner. We were looking for 10 winners. And going forward, we'd like to look at identifying the top 20 wines, and then from the top 20 wines, telling you who the top 10 are. So there's going to be even more kind of excitement about what's going to happen taking it forward. And we really are, I mean, the producers, there's a huge response to the competition. I think we're over 160 entries in the competition. And you're looking at a large slice of the Chenin that's produced in South Africa. I know there are some producers that don't enter the competition. That's always going to be the case. But at the end of the day, I think you have a very reassuring result and some fantastic wines. Every single one of them comes to mind as a wine that I'd like to have and to serve to my guests at some stage.
Ken, congratulations to you for getting into the top 10, but I think greater congratulations to you and to Ina for what you continue to do for Chenin Blanc and for supporting and celebrating and giving Chenin such a terrific platform. Enjoy the rest of your trip to the UK. I know it's always great fun being in London and spending rand, so enjoy those sandwiches, and we look forward to having you back in South Africa soon for a glass of Chenin Blanc and stories of the adventures which always accompany any interaction with Ken. Well done, and thanks for a very special day.
Cheers, Dan. Thank you very much.
There we go. Ken Forrester, the chair of the Chenin Blanc Association, one of the top 10. It's important to stress it doesn't have anything to do with the judging. Otherwise, there'd probably be a couple more in there. But a man who's very proudly Chenin Blanc pro and has done such amazing work with Chenin Blanc over the last few years. Now, the Chenin Blanc panel was chaired by James Pietersen. James was going to join us, unfortunately not able to be with us this evening. But one of the other judges is with us, just coincidentally, here for another reason entirely, because he's just made hundreds of millions of rand in what is effectively the new Bitcoin, which is vintage South African wine, alongside of Roland Peens, who's, I think, still trying to flog people farms somewhere in the Overberg. Together, they're two regular guests on the show, and it's lovely to have them back. Higgo and Roland, welcome back to Dan Really Likes Wine.
How's it, Dan? Can you hear me?
I can indeed. Welcome. Lovely. Both good to see you both, and thank you for joining us. And we've got a lot to talk about this evening because you had even by your standards, a quite remarkable auction just a few days ago. But before we jump into that, Higgo, you were part of that judging panel for the Chenin Blanc Awards. Ken in high spirits, and understandably so, as the chairman. Give us the honest appraisal as a judge. Were they really any good? Was this Chenin Blanc worth drinking?
Let me. I'll comment on that with a lot of confidence. I'm probably part of the reason that James is not here, so I'll stand in for him. I had lunch with James this afternoon, and we had a bottle of the Skurfberg, the Ibn Sadi Skurfberg 2019 that received 100 points from Tim Atkin in his report last year. And I mean, that wine is staggering. It was phenomenal, and we had a great lunch. But I'd say with a fair amount of confidence that the 10 wines that won the Standard Bank top 10 this year can stand up to that wine, no problem. We see the standards raising with Chenin Blanc every year. I was part of the judging panel right in the beginning when the competition started, I think around 10 years ago, and I've been included again now in recent years. And it's incredible to see what Chenin is doing. And the other, I think, notable thing to mention is you can, on the final day when we pick the 10 wines out of a possible, say, 30 candidates or finalists, you can include any of those other wines. There's a widespread broad band of top quality Chenin out there. So I very happily stand behind them. They're fantastic.
All right, well, there's the completion of today's endorsements for Chenin Blanc, and it's been a pleasure being part of that Chenin Blanc drive with the association and with Standard Bank, culminating in that live announcement today in what is it's an extraordinary week. Roland, for people who are watching, just give us a summary of the 25 gazillion rand that was spent on wine early on this week. I think you only sold about 5 bottles. What was sold? What did it go for?
Thanks, Dan, and thanks for having us on. It was an exciting auction that came up only a few weeks ago, where the art department was putting together a staggering list, a small list of really exclusive artwork in the Impression Expression auction, and said to us, aren't there any South African wines that we can showcase? A few very, very special lots. And Higgo had been talking to a few sellers, and we got wind of this 1821 that was available on the market. And the seller, as we've said in all of our text, was the Milan family of Somms. They had this precious bottle, and we convinced them to put it on auction this year. It is 200 years after the birth of that wine, so it is a good time to sell it, to sell the 1821 Grand Constance. We put that with some of the other legends in South African wine, which is the Joubert Muscat 1800, which is a Solera barrel that's been in the Joubert family for 7 generations. We also put the Warner Constance in there, the first vintage 87. And then the 2 most expensive, most prestigious red wines from the early part of last century or mid-century, the Libertas 57 and the GS 66. So we put these 5 up, hoping that they would all sell, and boy, did they sell. When the bids started coming in, we reached the low estimates, we got to high estimates, and it just kept on going. And I was alone at home the other night and celebrating by myself, jumping up and down, seeing these prices. It was just staggering. The estimates were blown out the water.
The estimates were already fairly high, but it's also difficult to work out exactly where these things are going. How much do you think, Higgo, the sale at the Fine and Rare Wine auction of another bottle of 1821 from the very, very few that still exist influenced the race to push this particular price up?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, Dan. I mean, it's we can't disqualify that's been a factor in raising the awareness of the wine. The larger amount of those bottles that still exist are with the Distel Tabernacle. These wines were all bought as part of a consignment in 1983. They were bought on Christie's in London. And from what we understand, they were part of a collection of bottles that were at the Apsley House cellar, the Duke of Wellington in London. And they were decanted and rebottled in the late 19th centuries, around the 1880s. So they were perhaps destined, as we say, for St. Helena, but they went to France and then back to the UK. And 3 personalities: Dani de Wet from de Wetshof, Frans Milan from Simonsig, and then Ryk Melk, who was at the time with Distel, was at that auction and bought a handful of those bottles. And that's what's left of them. And most of them have been drunk in the meantime. But this, the bottle that was sold in April certainly set the stage for us. And I think going forward, I mean, we're pretty much claiming our position now in a global player in fine wines, with the sense that we have the roots and we have the history as well. So I think what's remaining of these bottles are going to be I think time will tell. But just another little while I have the opportunity, just maybe a story to tell to explain how special this wine is. The bottle that was on sale in April was recorked. And that was done so by a team of professionals, mostly sponsored by Amram Corks. And when I went to fetch the bottle for this Strauss sale at Simonsig, I looked at the bottle when Johan Milan handed it over, and I have to say, he handed it over with me with a lot of care. It's like saying, this is passing from our family treasure trove. This is in your care now. And the moment I held it in my hand was when I made this decision that, we shouldn't recork this wine. It's just completely uncompromised in an incredible condition. So we offered it on the sale for the buyer as an option to have recorked, but just because it is so perfect in the condition that it's in, we decided not to recork it. So it really is a special bottle of wine. There's an aura that surrounds it, put it that way.
Well, there clearly is an aura, because you managed to get Derek Watts to do a good news story on Carte Blanche instead of the normal story that encourages you to emigrate to New Zealand the next day. And it was a really cool, positive piece, which fits into this narrative that seems to be slowly creeping in, Roland, where South African wine, and these are obviously extreme examples given the age, but South African wine has a value far beyond what we might have thought. If I look at the GS that sold one of the earliest Strauss auctions last year, I think that went for about 30,000 Rand. Now we're seeing that price almost triple. We see this bottle of 1821 pretty much double the sale of the bottle that featured on Carte Blanche and was sold at the Fine and Rare. Are these just little examples because these are such extraordinary bottles of wine, or does it speak to a market where a secondary wine trade is developing, where older wine can be bought for investment purposes and become a real asset?
Yeah, you've nailed it, Dan. It's a broad picture that you're seeing here. If you look at the prices from the Rhone auction, which was just a couple of weeks ago, Columella hit new all-time highs of about 4,300 Rand per bottle, which is about double or triple that when we started 2 or 3 years ago. And this platform was really designed or offered in order to grow the secondary market, to put information, to put wines out there for collectors to consider, and to hopefully help increase the awareness of these wines. And I think that's exactly what's happened. I remember when I first got into fine wine, I was on a website reading about old South African wines, and I saw this wine GS, and I did some more research, and I think Michael Fridjon was the only one that really knew anything about it at that stage. And I happened to find a bottle not very long after in a wine shop in the bargain bin. And I asked the lady behind the counter, I said, "How many of these you got?" And she said, "No, there's just one." I said, "How much?" 10 Rand I bought it for, Dan, 10 Rand. We drank it with Dirk Nieport and Jorg and a few other winos, and everyone was completely blown away. And as you say, we sold the bottle a couple of days ago for 90,000 Rand. So that just shows you in 15 years what's changed in the industry, and this flow of information certainly helps all of that.
You inadvertently stumble into my next question, for which I go back to our sommelier. And we've been speaking to Wikus after his great victory earlier on in the show. And he's a great one for supplying wine to drink. You can clearly invest in these wines and they have a value that will keep and it seems grow. But what about, Higgo, if I actually want to drink this wine? If I've decided, well, I've bought this GS66 for 90,000 Rand, I've bought this 1821 for the cost of a small country. I don't want to stick it in a cupboard. I don't want to hold on to it and then flog it on for an extra 50% in 10 years' time. I want to drink it. Is this wine that is still drinkable?
This is a key important point, Dan, that you raised, because these wines, all 5 that were on sale, they were recently tasted by international and local authorities. They get high ratings. So we're not selling wines that is just sort of a collector's item because they're rare. The content is alive. The wines are alive. They well and truly will be delicious if they're drunk. Whether the buyer intends to drink them or sell them, that time will tell. But the wines are incredible, and all 5 of those would be remarkable to taste. And it's something that I want to reiterate. We've known for a long time that we have a lot of history and that our sweet wines are incredible and that they age really well. But I find that the red wines is probably a little bit more of a hidden treasure. You know, the reds from South African soils, we don't really have that much reputation for red wines that have the ability to age for that long and that can fetch high prices. And with these sort of stellar examples like the GS and the Chateau Libertases starting to achieve these prices, we feel that this establishes our rightful place as a country that can produce fine wine that's investable and that can age, not only because 5 years and 10 years is not old. If you're starting to look 20 and 30 years plus, then you're starting to look at wines with serious age. And they're alive, they're incredible. The red wines have been recorked recently, so that ensures further life. And as I said earlier, we didn't recork the sweet just because of the incredible nick that the bottle was in.
We've got a number of people watching, including the Wino Ship team, who are watching over in the UK and possibly debating whether or not to spend 200 quid or 7 million rand on bringing in some of these exclusive bottles. Roland, I know that you and Higgo have got some incredibly high-end social engagement to get off to. So just before you do depart, somebody's watching this, they're thinking, okay, the Bitcoin hasn't worked for me. That property development in northern Mozambique is not looking quite so good either. Maybe I should put some money into wine, either as an investment or just a personal collectible. Give us a couple of basic rules. What should we be considering? What should we be looking at? What's the beginner's guide to putting some money into fine and rare wine?
That's a great question, Dan, because when you're drinking old wines, you're really drinking history. And today's wines might be drunk in 20, 30 years' time. So one needs to identify the brands which have long-term sustainability that'll be around for a long time. And we're starting to see this with the likes of Ibn Sadi, whose children are eager to take over from him. The Milan family at Simonsuk, these guys are going to be around for a long time. So brand equity is key. Buy the wines with brand equity that are obviously very highly rated and that are able to age. And then, of course, store them properly. They need to be in fine wine, professional fine wine, a cooled environment. And then hang on to them. As Higgo says, 5 years is not a long time. Fine wine can age for a very long time, and you just got to forget about it. It's a bit like Bitcoin, I guess.
Bitcoin versus an 1821 Banner Constance. I know which one I'd rather have.
Tell us, Dan.
Not the cryptocurrency would be the answer there, Roland. Guys, thank you both so much. I think as well as adding a new dimension to our understanding the value of South African wine, what you've done with these auctions is just open up an entirely new chapter of both the sale of wine and the appreciation of wine, and given us a real feel that, what, our wine can age, it can increase in value, and it's something that's pretty special, and it's long overdue. So thank you, both of you. I remember we first spoke about these auctions a while back, and nobody thought they would work, but they've worked really, really well. They'll continue to do so, and I look forward to many more of them. Just try not to bid, because they generally cost me a fortune. Higgo, Roland, thank you both very much indeed. Enjoy your evening. Enjoy your wild party. I can imagine you'll both be seeing the sunrise in a jacuzzi full of champagne and air hostesses. Have lots of fun. I look forward to having you both back on the show again soon.
We'll see you just now.
Thanks,
Cheers,
Dan. Cheers.
There we go. Higgo Jacobs, Sommelier at Large, which is a pretty cool title. That's some awesome stuff. One of the judges of the Chenin Blanc, a top 10, the Standard Bank earlier, but also together with Roland, putting together that Strauss Fine Wine auction. Almost R1 million for a bottle of Van de Constance. But you think you put that into pounds, that's 20,000 quid, as our Wino Ship team will know, for a 200-year-old bottle of the wine that Napoleon Bonaparte used to love. I think that's still a reasonably good deal, as crazy and mad as that might sound. But it's also a great story, and we do love stories on Dan Really Likes Wine. We had stories of Chenin Blanc. We had stories of a wonderful young sommelier who's making waves in South Africa and the world to come, and stories of wine that sold for vast amounts and reflected so well on South Africa as a result. All right, that does it for today. I've got no idea what we're doing on the show next week, but there's a reason for that. I'm on a plane later on tonight, and I will be off via Amsterdam to Dublin. When I get there tomorrow evening, I'm going to pick up some wine from a local supermarket, and on Monday, I'll be doing a show on the wine I found on the streets of Dublin, and we'll see what's available, how drinkable it is, who's making waves in Ireland. I've got a week in Ireland, I've got a week in Scotland at the Alfred Dunhill, so there's some international wine drinking to be done, and as always, flying that South African flag and making sure people are drinking plenty of South African. Big thank you to Wikus Human from Marble and Saint, our South African Sommelier of the Year. Thank you to the Chenin Blanc Association, to Chairman Ken Forrester, to the wonderful Ina Smith, and to the Standard Bank team for partnering up with our announcement earlier on today and being part of this evening's show, and to Roland and to Higgo for another terrific sale and another great story in the annals of South African wine. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. If you haven't seen it already, please catch the final episode of Adventures in Chenin with the Fledge down the Claim Karoo, Leon and Margot. Some lovely wine, some great food, and some terrific stories. Keep drinking South African wine, and I'll see you from Ireland on Monday. Goodbye. To join the Pick and Pay Wine Club, simply SMS your smart shopper number to 36775. It's absolutely free, and you'll get for yourself 3 times the smart shopper points on every bottle of wine bought. You'll also get a 20% discount on 10 different wines each month, a 25% discount on a case of wine, and a Magnum, some terrific competitions and invitations to awesome events.